The original arcade game Dragon's Lair had polarized reactions with gamers. Some loved the advanced visuals and the distinct QuickTime button press playstyle, which required a lot of memorization. However, others saw it as a pseudo-game that just drew players in at a more expensive price with fancy graphics. There have been several ports of that game on a number of devices, but another game was released in 2002 that really answered the critics of the original title. This is Dragon's Lair 3D Return to the Lair for the GameCube. Dragon's Lair 3D basically has the same story as the original game, with the clumsy protagonist Dirk out to rescue Daphne. In fact, the game actually even uses shot-for-shot sequences of the original game with a 3D effect for some areas. Unlike some sequels released years after the original, I don't think any fans will be disappointed. The game also keeps the sense of humor from the original and even includes a few 2D cutscenes. Gameplay has been changed significantly from the original Dragon's Lair, though. The first game can actually be played with a DVD remote, it's so simple, but Return to the Lair is more of an action-adventure game. You have full control over Dirk, and can run, jump, and swing your sword at will. Combat can come down to just button mashing at times, but the game's enemies are pretty entertaining. However, the controls are extremely stiff for a game like this. Fans of the original know how hard it was, but this really doesn't add anything outside of frustration. Trying to do the same area 10 different times because you can't go where you're trying to is a common occurrence. Now, so far, with the exception of the plot, the game doesn't really sound that much like Dragon's Lair, but it actually is more than you might think. Dragon's Lair 3D puts traps into the levels that you have absolutely no warning for, and I mean none. You'll get smashed by bookshelves, lit on fire, and smashed by boulders. However, that's a classic element of Dragon's Lair. The game wants you to look back at your desk to figure out how to move forward, and this game does that very well. But the stiff controls do cause problems, obviously not associated with the original. Some areas require extremely precise movement, and this can definitely cause some controller throwing. You've been warned. Although Dragon's Lair 3D does have a cel-shaded look, it still does have the same feel of the original game. It's hard to explain, but everything still looks familiar. Voice acting has a very humorous tone that fits the game well, even though it is pretty cheesy, and sound effects are also really lighthearted. This is definitely not a game that takes itself seriously. Dragon's Lair 3D is a game that proves that having a new gameplay style does not necessarily change the feel of the original. This might not be for anyone who really doesn't appreciate the humor, but it is definitely a hidden gem. This would be a ton of fun to play with a friend for a weekend, but you will need some patience.